Hi everybody and welcome to our Apprenticeship Service webinar. Today we're going to be having a look at how employers can request apprenticeship training in the Apprenticeship Service and then how training providers can respond. And this session is obviously both for employers and for training providers. My name's Nick Duff from the Service Engagement team and I'll be doing the hosting today. So as usual, as I start, can I just do my usual reminder and say that this webinar is being recorded? And can I remind you all that by registering and attending today that you've all given your consent and you're agreeing for the webinar to be both recorded and uploaded onto our YouTube channel. Just to say that if you feel that you've changed your mind regarding that consent, can I ask that you please dial off? Okay. As for the recording of the session, so I will tell you how you can access those a little bit later on. So hopefully you've all noticed that you've all automatically been placed on mute and you'll remain on mute throughout the webinar. So the plan today is that we're going to go through a demo of how employers can find apprenticeship training for their apprentices and then how to request training where no results are found in Find Apprenticeship Training. And then we'll look at then how the training providers can respond to those requests and how those requests are managed. So we'll have a demo of all of that. And then after that demo is completed, we'll go into a Q&A session. Once we're done with the Q&A session, I'll let you know how you can access a handout from today, which will have all of the key links that we'll be referring to during the session. So if you've got questions for the presenters, what you can do is you can pop them into the questions tab that you can see on your control panel. So the control panel should be on the right hand side of your screen, and what you're looking for is a heading called questions. So if you click on that, you can put your questions in there. During the Q&A session, we'll try and cover as many of those questions as we can. We aim to cover all of the main points that you raise, even if we don't get around to answering each specific individual question. But what we will do is every question that comes in, we will take that information and we'll share it with the dev team and also with our user research colleagues so that they can take account of any of your comments and thoughts and any insights that you've got as they continue to develop the service. Obviously, any questions, if you put questions in, please make them relevant to today's topic, and we won't cover questions that aren't relevant for us. We're expecting the webinar today to last for around 60 minutes, possibly a little bit less. So that's the sort of timeline we're looking for today. And can I also just remind you that at the end of the session, as you leave the webinar, you will be directed to a very quick survey. We love to hear what you think about the webinars that we run. So please just take a moment to answer a couple of quick questions and give us some of your feedback. So today I'm going to be joined by Sangeetha Govindaraj, Chris Hicks, Lucy Brennan and Jamie Lank, and they're from the team that's been working on developing the request apprenticeship training journey within the Apprenticeship Service. So Sangeetha is going to be doing the main input of the session, and then everybody else has joined us and they'll be helping answer your questions in the Q&A session. So welcome to everybody, welcome to you all, and I think we're ready to start. So Sangeetha, I'm going to hand over to you if you're ready.
Thanks, Nick. Hi all. As Nick mentioned, I'm Sangeetha Govindaraj, and I'm here to demonstrate how employers can request for apprenticeship training and how training providers can respond to those requests. All right, so a little bit of background first. Our team at the Apprenticeship Service was tasked with improving the aggregated employer demand service, which was launched way back in June 2021. During our research, we had found employers sometimes struggle to find training provisions for their apprentices, and this could be because no provision exists to them locally. Provision exists, but it's not necessarily suitable, or there is simply no provision for the specific standard they are searching for. And when it came to requesting for training for these provisions, employers with a limited number of apprentices did not necessarily have enough apprentices to form a large enough cohort to make running that course viable for training providers. And on the training provider side, training providers were using the aggregated demand service functionality to view requests from employers for training provision. However, what we had found was often these requests were coming from students using the service to inquire about apprenticeships by mistake. So if we pop over to the next slide, please. Okay, so from the feedback that we'd collected, we've now added some new functionalities to improve and enhance this journey. So now employers are required to log in to their Manage Apprenticeships account to make a request to request an apprenticeship training. This ensures only valid requests are being shared with training providers. We've created a brand new request apprenticeship training form for employers to ask if training providers can run a course, and this supports multiple apprentice locations and provides email confirmations and notifications for request responses to employers. Employers can now also manage these requests and responses from providers via their employer accounts. On the training provider side, training providers can still view employer requests for training, but they can now also respond to employers via the service. And overall, these enhancements improve the quality of data captured by the Apprenticeship Service, and they can now be used to support gaps in training provision. Right, so what I'll do now is I'll take off the screen share and I will demonstrate the two new journeys, starting with how employers can request for apprenticeship training. Then I'll cover how training providers can respond to those requests. Do bear with me for a moment. All right, can I just get a quick check to see you're all able to see my screen on the employer account?
Yeah, I can see it, Sangeeta.
Oh, fabulous. All right, okay. So employers will need to sign in to their Manage Apprenticeships account or create an account in order to access and submit training request forms. And as mentioned before, this ensures all requests are coming from valid employers. There'll be a link on the employer account homepage to find apprenticeship training and manage requests. So here you can start a new search for training on Find Apprenticeship Training, or you can manage existing requests. We'll revisit the manage existing requests once we've demoed the training providers sending responses. So as mentioned before, employers will first need to search for training options available on the Find Apprenticeship Training service. Just another quick check here to see, you can all see the Find Apprenticeship Training service now?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So for the demo, I will be picking accounting finance manager, and we can view current providers for this course. So view providers for this course. On Find Apprenticeship Training, what you'll see is all of the existing training options available for this particular standalone course. As an employer, once you've had a chance to review all of these options, you may identify that these options aren't suitable, or there may be scenarios where there are none listed. So in this scenario, as an employer, you can ask if training providers can run this course using the link at the bottom of the page. So clicking on this button, you may be prompted to select an employer account if you have more than one. Otherwise, you'll be navigated to the new Request Apprenticeship Training form. So the request form consists of the following questions: the number of apprentices you require training for. If you're not certain at this stage, you can put in an estimated number. If it's for more than one apprentice, you will be asked an additional question about whether the training will take place in the same location for all of these apprentices. If all apprentices are trained at the same location, you can select yes, and you'll be directed to the single location page where you can search and select the town, city, or postcode where the training should take place. I'm going to pop back for a second to show you the other option. So if your apprentices all live in different locations, you can add multiple locations on a single request by selecting no here. Instead, you'll be directed to a multiple location screen where you can select all of the options that apply. The final question requires you as an employer to select the type of training required. You can select one or more of the options available, so at an apprentice workplace, day release, and block release. Your choices for the entire form will be played back to you on the Check Your Answers page, allowing you to go back and change answers if it's required before you submit the form. So once the form is submitted, you'll see this confirmation screen, and you will also be sent a confirmation email to your email address. So training requests will be active for 3 months unless you cancel the request before that time. What we'll do is we'll revisit the functionality to manage existing requests or responses from training providers once I've demoed the training provider side. Right. Now on to the training providers. I'm just going to pause here for a second to check you can see the training provider account now.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So training providers can view employer requests and respond to these requests from their Manage Apprenticeships account. So on the home page, there will be a link to view employer requests for training. Here, as a training provider, you can see an aggregated view of requests for each course. For each course, we display the sector, the aggregated number of apprentices, and the number of employers requiring training. These are displayed here to help you identify opportunities to run new courses. A new tag is displayed on courses where a new employer request has come in since the last time you logged in. So here is the employer request that we have just made, the new. So, clicking onto the course, you can review the individual employer requests and respond to each employer via the service. Each section here is a request from an individual employer. So you can see we have 2 requests here, one for 5 apprentices and another for 123. On the Contacted tab, you can also view previous employer requests you have responded to as a training provider. So after reviewing all of the new requests that have come through, you can select all of the requests that are suitable to respond to. Once you click on Continue, you will need to select the details to share in your response to employers. This can be the individual's account details, so your account details, or you can select details that are associated with your provider organization. Just a note here that these questions will only be asked if you have more than one set of contact details associated with your organization as a training provider. So here I'll pick email and a telephone number. On the Check Your Answers page, you can review your responses. So you can review the requests that you are responding to, so each employer that you're responding to. And you can also review the contact details you'll be sharing with the employers. Once you submit, you'll see a confirmation page, and you'll also receive a confirmation email as well. The employers you have responded to will also receive an email notification. Your responses will be displayed in the employer accounts as previously shown, as I'm about to show. And once the employers have reviewed the responses from their account, they'll contact you using the contact details shared to discuss the training arrangements. So, as mentioned earlier, I'm going to pop back to the employer account to show you all how these responses from training providers can be viewed by employers. So again, under Find Apprenticeship Training and Manage Requests, and under Manage Your Training Requests in particular, employers can view all existing requests for training and responses from training providers. The Active Requests tab will show you any new responses, or will show you your existing requests, and will highlight any new responses from training providers since you as the employer last logged in. You can review responses and contact the training provider using the contact details that were shared. These can be found on the training request page. And finally, you can also cancel a request before the 3-month window if you no longer require training for the course or need to amend the request. After 3 months, active requests will be moved over to the expired tab, where they can continue to be viewed for a further 3 months. And that is the end-to-end journey of how employers can make training requests and training providers can respond to these requests. So I'll pass back to Nick.
Okay, thanks very much, Sangeeta. That was a really useful run through as a demo of both the employer and the provider journeys there. Thanks very much for doing that. Can I just remind everybody that if you've got questions about anything that Sangeeta's mentioned today, or if there's anything that's unclear, please pop them into the questions section, and we'll work through some of those. We've had a few questions that didn't quite relate to today's topic, so we'll take those away, and I'll make sure they get sent through to the right dev teams and the right user research colleagues, so that they can see what's been mentioned. There is a question about, because Sangeeta mentioned achievement rate information and asking how up to date and reliable that is. That is as up to date and reliable as it can be, given the information that we have available to us. So what's represented there is actually a good indication of achievement. So there's another question, if I can, Chris, I'm going to ask you a question, and that's so. How does this actually, what Sangeeta's gone through that journey, how does it actually speed up the process for finding training? An employer said that they've got requests that they put in before and they haven't heard anything back.
Hi, thanks for forwarding that question, Nick. So this process is really about finding out if training providers can offer training, and if that is or isn't the case, then there may need to be a conversation to figure out if an organisation can meet those requirements. In instances where there is no provision available, this allows us to demonstrate the demand for that provision, and then that demand can create supply. So what our design does is it aims to make the journey visible to the employer and to the training provider, so they can both easily keep track of those requests, of those indications of demand, and then the training provider can respond and access them from their account and satisfy that demand. Does that make sense?
Yeah, perfect. Okay, cool. And then a question for Lucy, if I can. So this is a question from an employer. Why do they have to be specific about their request? Why can't they just make a general request and let just training providers just contact the employer?
So because Find Apprenticeship Training is the first port of call, and there are hundreds of listings in the Find Apprenticeship Training, it's actually much quicker to search and use the filters so that you can define the specific needs through the Find Apprenticeship Training. And if the training's already available, then it's much quicker to just contact the training provider directly using the details provided in that service. So this is really just if you can't find anything in Find Apprenticeship Training.
Cool. And then whilst I've got you, Lucy, there's another question from an employer saying, how long has the training provider got to respond to a request? So once that request has been made, what's the provider response timing?
So once you've made a request, that's active for 3 months. So it could be during, that time period, but training providers will be able to see those requests immediately. So provided they can offer it, they can reply instantly. And obviously, once you've made your request, it can still be viewed in the expired tab. So if you did want to make it again, you can do that. And obviously, the hope is training providers will keep on checking in, and that somebody will be able to respond, and hopefully quickly. But we can't set a time because obviously it's up to the training providers to go into their accounts and respond. Okay, cool. Thank you. Sangeetha, a couple of questions for you, if I can, if you've caught your breath. So there's a question from an employer asking us how we're tackling issues where training providers are listed as offering a particular apprenticeship, but when they're contacted by the employer, it turns out that they don't actually offer that.
So the request apprenticeship side of the training service is almost adjacent to this this particular problem that's being faced on the Find Apprenticeship Training Service. So what's being asked is that there are multiple training provider options, and then when you go ahead on Find Apprenticeship Training, when you go ahead and try and request that training, they're no longer offering that particular scenario. So one of the things that we're doing on the request apprenticeship training side is allowing employers to be able to make a request directly with training providers when the existing options are not suitable. Alongside this, what we're doing is we're collecting data about how often employers are having to make these training requests at the bottom of the page when existing training providers are available and Find Apprenticeship Training. So what we're doing from a policy perspective is looking through these kind of options and identifying places where we think there are training options that either need to have their details updated or aren't necessary are being overlooked by employers. And what we're doing is we're going to be working with the Find Apprenticeship Training side to improve the options that are available on that side.
Cool. Thank you very much for that. And then a question, Chris, if I can come to you. What happens if the employer request doesn't get any responses from training providers? What goes on then? Chris, if you're responding, you're on mute.
Oh no, perilous.
There you go.
Okay, so in the unlikely event that a request does not receive any responses from any providers, it will eventually time out. We can't leave things on the system forever. I believe it's 3 months for something to go into an inactive state if it gets no responses, and then another 3 months for it to be removed from the archive as well. We do let you let things be archived so that you can see them if you need to refer back for your own records. That's not to say that you can't cancel a request yourself. If you are just ready to close the request because you've not getting responses or you've resolved it elsewhere, you can do that in the system. But requests will eventually be timed out. If you do want to close it early, you can create a new request if you feel that you need to change the details in any way to perhaps get a better match. That's another option that will be available to you. But in all these instances, you will be able to see the most up-to-date responses in the system when you log in.
Cool, thank you. Actually, an interesting question. So somebody's mentioned the recording, the version that will end up on our YouTube channel, and asking whether or not the recording will be subtitled. Yes, it will. So all of the webinar recordings that we put onto to YouTube will be accessible for you in that way. So yes, that's there. Question for Lucy, if I can. So this is an interesting question. So does an employer have to go through this process if they're already working with if they've already had training providers they've dealt with before?
That is a great question. And no, if you're happy with your training provider and they're offering what you want, you don't need to use this service. You can directly speak with that training provider, of course.
Cool. And then while I've got you again, Lucy, employers just checked to their account. They've got 33 requests. Only 3 are for the type of program. Oh no, actually, this is I don't know. I'm not sure this is an employer or provider. Let's go through the question again. Just checked our account. We've got 33 requests. Only 3 are for the type of program we deliver. Replying to 30 requests for programs in sectors that we don't deliver or advertise isn't a good use of time. Can something be put into AS to stop requests for programs in an area of delivery?
Absolutely. That is a great question. So we appreciate that you are having to look through those requests to search. Currently, as it stands, all of the requests are available, but you can use the filters to look in the sector that's relevant to you. It has been part of our design process to suggest smart matching, which would mean that you would then more easily be able to see the ones that are in your sector that are relevant to you. Unfortunately, there wasn't time with this release to do that, but it certainly is something that we've recommended and hopefully can be looked at in the future. So that is something on our radar, and we do appreciate that. But for now, if you use the filters for your sector, hopefully that just makes it a bit more manageable.
Cool. And then another one for you. Are email notifications sent to tell employers where a training provider's replied?
They are. So currently it is a weekly email. We didn't want to do it for every one that was replied because you could be bombarded with emails. So we suggest if something is urgent that you do keep checking, but you will get a weekly email that shows which requests have been responded to, and then you can go into your account to see the individual responses.
Thank you. Sangeetha, a couple of questions for you, if I can. So is the data that's put forward monitored? And if, i.e., how many apprenticeships are not used and are then taken away and new standards put in?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as I mentioned before, one of the big changes that we've made is making sure the requests are coming through valid employers. So asking you to, as an employer, to log in to make those requests ensures that we understand the types of requests that are coming through. And this is the data that's being monitored by our policy colleagues to better understand the types of requests that are coming through, ensuring that there are providers available to cover areas of high demand, but also monitor where there are potentially training courses out there that are not as in demand, and talk about avenues to improve the Find Apprenticeship training service to ensure that you're able to see options that are more relevant to yourselves.
Okay, thank you. And then, so I like this question from an employer. Says, what's the benefit to me of using this function as opposed to, say, just searching for it through a search engine?
Yeah, so the difference here is that we are, and we've probably mentioned this a few times, we are collecting this data, so it gives us a clear idea of the demand, whereas when you're Googling, you might just find options for yourself as an individual. The training provider on the other side might not be able to provide that training because there isn't a large enough cohort of apprentices that you have to cover that course. What we do is we're bringing together all of the aggregated demand across multiple employers and making this a viable option for training providers to take on a particular course.
Cool, thanks. Chris, do the requests need to be specific to providers, or I think we might have covered this one, but I'll ask it again. Do requests need to be specific to providers, or can you put in general requests into the system?
Okay, so the requests, I think I've got it. Yeah. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Two new ones. So the requests are specific to the apprenticeship, not to a specific provider. You don't need to choose a provider for the request to go to. It will be seen by multiple providers, and then they can respond to you. If you have a specific provider in mind for a certain apprenticeship, this probably is a tool that you would want to use, and we would recommend that you just reach out to that provider directly. This is specifically to solve the problem for people who know what apprenticeship they want their apprentice to study, but they don't know which providers can provide that apprenticeship.
Okay, thank you. Lucy, a couple of questions for you. The first one is around sort of providers. It says that it's about the provider offer, and this employer uses some providers that aren't included in the search. So how would those providers see any requests that are made?
So if the providing the providers are listed at all, but it's just that standard isn't showing, they will still get those requests, because currently the providers see all of the requests that have come through. So they choose the ones that they respond to based on their sector or areas that they know they can cover. So even if they see one and they don't have a listing date, but they would be able to offer it, then they can respond.
Cool, thank you. And then a question about Find Apprenticeship training. So will Find Apprenticeship training remain as a standalone, or is there any expectation that it will merge into the Apprenticeship Service?
So the Find Apprenticeship training search absolutely will stay as is. So that would be the first place you go to look.
But in that case, the search will be there. So Find Apprenticeship training will stay as a standalone. But once well, again, correct me if I'm wrong, because I wasn't doing the presentation on this. But once an employer's gone through that, looked for something, can't find what they're looking for either, there's no provision or not the right standard, then they can go back in through their account to make the request for apprenticeships for apprenticeship training providers to respond to. Exactly. And that's the key difference, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah. Thank you. Sangeetha, question again for you, if I can. Is there any approach for provision when there are constantly no responses to requests? Will you be taking control of encouraging provision of standards?
Sorry, Nick, my internet dropped just a second. Can you repeat that? That's all right.
Yeah, so it was a question about is there any approach from us, I think, for provision where there's constantly no responses to requests that employers are making, and will we be taking any control of encouraging providers to offer standards?
Yes, so that is a key part of the service, is being able to accurately understand what the demand is for a particular training provision, and if there is consistently there are consistent requests and there are no responses, then provide the policy in this area could be adapted to push to encourage providers to bring these courses about.
I'm not sure whether you finished the question, Sangeetha, then, or whether your internet's dropped out.
Well, I think I finished that. Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. Sorry, we had a bit of dead air then. I was worried. Chris, a couple of questions for you. Training provider question this time. Is there a way that training providers can send an email when somebody makes requests for the courses that they run?
Okay. So as an employer, you'll be able to view your information on Find Apprenticeship Training on FAT. However, one of our design recommendations as an outcome from this piece of work is that there could be alerts like you've just described for sectors or for courses or for other parameters that you deliver, so that you as a training provider don't have to constantly be checking for new requests. This isn't something that we've developed right now, but it is something that could be developed in a future iteration of the design, which is just to say that the way that we work in Government apprenticeships is that it's an iterative design process. So this will be something that gets recommended into the future. And if you have other requests like this, I would say please do put them in the chat, and we thank you for putting them in the chat, because this is exactly how we gather feedback from people like you to inform decisions on what does get developed in the future.
Cool, thank you. Jamie, a question for you. So this is where I think an employer makes a request and the employer's name isn't shown. So wouldn't it be better to just be upfront and show the name of the employer at that point that a request is being made?
Yeah, that's a great question. So from the user research, we found that most employers prefer to stay anonymous. And for this service in particular, we really focused on the course request rather than specifically contacting employers. So that's certainly something we can investigate, kind of as Chris said, as the service iterates. But right now, the current service allows training providers to see the demand in their area, and it really gives employers the choice to contact the providers that have responded to their request. So it's just based on their feedback that we've implemented it this way.
Cool. Okay, thank you. Sangeetha, can the system be used to help find a provider if they're planning, if the employer's planning a recruitment campaign?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we'd recommend is you use the Find Apprenticeship Training search service to look for potential training providers. If none of those providers suit your particular needs, then you can always go ahead and make that request using that link at the bottom of the page.
Thank you. And then Lucy, that's quite a niche question, this one. When there's a standard where there's a standard that has different pathways, the example that's given is like an advanced clinical practitioner, is there an opportunity to request the specific pathway that the employer is looking for?
So currently there isn't. That is certainly something that we could consider, and I'll definitely make a note of that. I think what I would suggest is if there are different, for that standard where the things are showing up, you would need to have conversations with the training providers around that. But certainly we'll add that as something of a recommendation.
Cool, thank you. And then still with you, if I can. So this employer currently searches for apprenticeships on IFATE, which is I think the Institute for Apprenticeships and Technical Education, and then identify providers via the standard number, and then use their dynamic purchasing system to run evaluation as per public sector requirements. Does the search for provider service take us away from doing what we do now?
No, not at all. If that's working for you, absolutely you can do it that route. This is really for people who are struggling and unable, perhaps aren't aware of the system, or don't have those sort of systems in place. It's like almost an alternative for you to use. So you can, if you're happy with the way things are working, you can continue with that route. This is just an alternative that we can provide.
Okay, thank you. I think that brings us to an end of the questions that I can see. on here. So thank you very much for everybody that has submitted questions. Thank you for the guys for answering all of those in the depth that you have. That's really useful. For those questions that weren't sort of quite relevant, like I said, to today's topic, or need a bit more investigation, we'll take those away. As I said, we'll share them with the dev team, share them with our user research colleagues, so that we can look at how we can take on your comments and insights into future developments for the service. Yes, so thanks guys for looking at those. If I can just move on to the next slide, please, if I may. Okay, so I've mentioned a couple of times about the recordings for the webinar being on YouTube. So I just wanted to plug the fact that we've got a YouTube channel. It's at DFE Sector Comms. Today's recording of this webinar will go on to the Apprenticeship Service webinar recordings playlist, and that'll be in about a week's time. And will be accessible with subtitles. There are a couple of other YouTube channels as well. So all of our other support videos covering different functions of the Apprenticeship Service are in the Using the Apprenticeship Service playlist, and some other videos created just to support the delivery of apprenticeships in general are available on the Apprenticeship Service, Apprenticeship Support Videos playlist. So have a look at that channel, go on there and subscribe. If you click on the bell icon, you get alerts when new content's uploaded, so you can keep track of any new content that comes on there. If I move on to the next slide. Yeah, here we go. So on this slide, I've got a couple of links to places that you can go to access support. And we've put together a PDF document with all of those links that you can access now from your control panel that's on the screen under the handouts tab. So go and have a look at that, download that handout. That way you don't have to scribble down any of the links and the details whilst we're going through them. So a plug for apprenticeships.gov.uk. It's a great way to stay up to date with information about apprenticeships and the Apprenticeship Service, so please do go and have a look at that. For our training provider colleagues, there's the further education and training providers community link there, which is a peer-led discussion forum for providers. It's a great place to go and get information and support. To register for any of our future webinars, I've included the link that you should follow to that. And in a few days' time, but definitely by the end of the week, there'll be an on-demand recording of today's webinar available from that link as well, so you can go back and listen to it through that link as well. And we keep that recording up for about a month or so, and then that drops off, but the YouTube recording, as I mentioned, will stay and be permanent, and will be at least 12 or 18 months on the playlist. And then if you've got any specific queries about the Apprenticeship Service, you can always use the self-service support tool, or you can email the support team as well, and their contact details are on the slide and in the handout. Just want to remind people, particularly the employer colleagues, you can give feedback about to your training provider about their strengths and their areas to improve, and you can do that through your Apprenticeship Service account. Please, if you can go and give your feedback, you can help your provider to improve their service to both you and your apprentices, and it also helps other employers to choose their providers as well, because they'll see that information in Find Apprenticeship Training. So sign into your Apprenticeship Service account and click on feedback on training providers. So from there, you'll be asked, I think it's 3 multiple choice questions, just to give your feedback about your providers. And if you want, you can update that survey every 90 days and give your feedback to make sure your feedback stays up to date. For our provider colleagues that are on the call, in your Apprenticeship Service accounts, you'll now see a display of all of the feedback from both employers and apprentices from for the last 5 years, and you'll see your annualised ratings in there as well. Your overall rating, which is the average of your annual results, will still be shown in Find Apprenticeship Training, but you can see it in your feedback section in your accounts as well. So please go and sign into your account and have a look at all the feedback that you've got from your apprentices and from your employers. And then finally, I've just been asked to give a shout out to about the Apprenticeship Ambassador Network. So the network's doing great work, and it's looking to grow the network now. So they're encouraging more employers and also apprentices to become ambassadors. So employers, if you're interested in that, if you can inform and inspire the next generation of apprentices and apprenticeship employers, please click on the link to get more information about the network and look at what that ambassador role entails. And the link is in the handout. And providers, you can play your part as well. If you've got apprentices that you think would make great apprentice ambassadors, please give them the details. Please give them the link so that they can look at that and see if that role is right for them as well. So yeah, please provide that information over to them. Okay, I think that's us done. That brings us to the end of the session today. So we're quicker than we possibly expected to be, so that's cool. Thank you very much for everybody for joining us. Thank you for all of the questions that you submitted, and thank you to my presenters and panel members for their responses to the questions as well. And as you all leave, please remember, do complete the short survey and give us your feedback about today. So that's us done. So bye everybody, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.